Okay, so let's just put it out there. If you own a dog or even if you just follow a few dog accounts on Instagram, your feed has probably been a complete nightmare this week.
Oh, yeah. Absolute chaos.
I mean, I'm talking about headlines screaming words like toxic, poison, and alarm right next to pictures of the exact same brown pellets that are sitting in millions of kitchen pantries right now.
Including yours, I bet.
Including mine, by the way. I was looking at my dog's bowl this morning, just
Second-guessing everything.
exactly. It's the kind of news cycle that makes you want to run to the kitchen, grab the bag of food, and just throw it straight into the trash without even reading the label.
Which is a totally natural impulse. I definitely had that exact same thought. It feels like every few years we get a wave of panic like this, but this one feels different.
It does, because we aren't talking about, a recall of one obscure brand because of a salmonella outbreak or something.
Right.
We're talking about a massive new investigation claiming that popular dry dog foods, the stuff most of us use, contain alarming levels of heavy metals, lead, arsenic, mercury, like the heavy hitters.
And that is exactly why we need to do this deep dive today.
Right.
Because the panic is understandable, but panic is also just a terrible place to make decisions from.
Right.
If you actually read the source material, which is this new, really comprehensive report by the nonprofit Clean Label Project, or CLP, the story is much more complex than just, kibble equals poison.
So here is the plan for today. We're going to unpack this report. CLP tested 79 top-selling dog foods. They ran over 11,000 individual tests. We're going to look at the scary numbers, sure.
Which are definitely there.
They are. But we're also going to look at the industry pushback, specifically regarding the science of what they call moisture math, which is surprisingly controversial.
Very controversial. And we have to talk about the business side, too. Because the timing of this report suggests this isn't just about safety. It's a weapon in the format wars between Big Kibble and the new wave of fresh food companies.
Yeah, the timing is wild. So the mission today is to figure out, is our dog's food actually dangerous, or is this a case of data being used as marketing leverage? So let's just start with the report itself. What did the Clean Label Project actually find?
They found a hierarchy of contamination. I think that's the best way to describe it. When they lined up these 79 products, so dry kibble, wet food, freeze-dried, and fresh frozen, there's a very distinct pattern.
Okay.
Dry dog food, the traditional kibble, performed the worst across the board for heavy metals.
And when you say worst, are we talking about a slight difference? Like, is kibble 10% worse than fresh food?
No. We were talking about multiples. The stats in the report are startling. According to their testing, dry food contained roughly 21 times more lead than the fresh or frozen samples.
21 times. That is not a rounding error. That is an order of magnitude.
It is massive. And it wasn't just lead either. For arsenic, dry food had 13.3 times more than fresh.
Wow.
For mercury, it was 20 times more.
Okay, those numbers sound huge. But I always wonder about context, because there is lead in the soil, right? There is arsenic in apple seeds. Is this high compared to human food, or just high compared to other dog food?
That's the comparison that really creates the shock value here. The Clean Label Project benchmarked these dog foods against thousands of human consumer products they've tested over the last decade.
And
They found that dry dog food contains 3 to 13 times more heavy metals than the average product you or I would buy at the grocery store.
that just feels entirely backwards. I mean, we treat these animals like our children. I referred my dog as my son, which I know some people roll their eyes at, but
I do the exact same thing.
right. But we are feeding them lead levels that we would never tolerate in our own diets.
And it gets more specific. There was another chemical flagged in the report that I think scared people even more than the lead. Mostly because a lot of people just hadn't heard of it before. Acrylamide.
Yeah, I had to look this one up. It sounds like something from a high school chemistry set. What is that doing in dog food?
So acrylamide is a chemical compound, it's a probable carcinogen, that forms when carbohydrate-rich foods are cooked at very high temperatures, usually above 248 degrees Fahrenheit or about 120 Celsius.
So like burnt toast.
Exactly. Burnt toast, crispy French fries, potato chips. It's a byproduct of the Maillard reaction, which is what makes food brown and tasty. But here is the problem for dog food. Kibble is essentially dough that is blasted with extreme heat and pressure to make it shelf-stable.
That's the extrusion process, right?
Correct. Imagine a pressure cooker turned into a cannon.
Jeez.
To get that crunchy, dry pellet that could sit in a bag for 12 months without spoiling, you have to cook the hell out of it. And the testing found that dry food had 24 times higher levels of acrylamide than fresh food.
24 times. And there was a quote from Dr. Joseph Wachschlag, a veterinarian from Cornell, that really stuck with me in the research. He mentioned one specific sample hit 780 parts per billion.
Right. And to put 780 parts per billion into perspective, Dr. Wachschlag compared it to a human eating 5 servings of French fries every single day.
Every day. For their entire life.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about dog food, right? We don't rotate it like human diets. A dog eats the exact same bowl of food twice a day for 10 years.
That is the crux of the issue. It's not acute poisoning. Your dog isn't going to keel over after one bowl of kibble.
Yeah.
The fear is about the cumulative exposure over a lifetime.
Okay, so we have the what? The lead, arsenic, mercury, and the French fry chemical. Now we need the why. Because I think a lot of listeners might be imagining a villain in a factory pouring a vial of poison into the mixer. But that's not what's happening.
No, absolutely not. There is no malice here. Nobody wants to hurt dogs. This is a story about sourcing and biology. The Clean Label Project identifies 3 main culprits, and they are actually things we see on the label and think are good, or at least normal.
Let's play detective then. Where is the lead coming from?
Culprit number 1 is meat byproducts or meals.
Which is standard in almost every kibble. Chicken meal, beef meal.
Right. Byproducts usually includes organs like liver, kidneys, and bone. Now think about the biological function of a liver or a kidney. What do?
They filter toxins out of the body?
Exactly. They are the body's filtration system. So if a cow or a chicken has been exposed to heavy metals in its feed or its environment, those metals get trapped and accumulate in the organs.
Ah.
When you take those organs and render them down into a highly concentrated powder or meal for pet food, you are essentially taking the filter full of toxins and feeding it directly to the dog.
That is, I mean, it's a gross but very logical realization. It's bioaccumulation.
Precisely. And culprit number 2 is plant-based carbs, specifically rice. Rice is notorious for sucking arsenic right out of the soil. It's a problem in human food, too, but in cheap dog food, it's used as a massive filler.
And the third culprit?
The vitamin pack. Almost every bag says complete and balanced, which means they add a premix of vitamins and minerals. But these minerals are mined from the earth. If they aren't highly purified, they drag heavy metals along with them.
So it's the cocktail effect. You take the organ meat that stored the lead, mix it with the rice that sucked up the arsenic, add a vitamin pack with trace metals, and then blast it all in a heat cannon to create acrylamide.
And then you dehydrate it, so it's incredibly dense. That is the recipe for the numbers we are seeing.
Okay, that sounds damning. Really damning. But we promised a balanced view, and when you look at the response from the industry groups like the Pet Food Institute, they aren't just rolling over.
Not at all.
They argue that these numbers are actually misleading because of something called moisture math. I struggle with this part of the research a bit, so walk me through it.
Yeah, this is the most important part to understand if you want to be fair to the kibble companies. Fresh food is roughly 70% water. Kibble is less than 10% water.
So if I take a cup of fresh food and a cup of kibble, the fresh food is mostly water weight.
Right. So if you test them as fed, meaning, just taking a scoop out of the bag and testing it, the kibble's going to look way, way more concentrated with everything, including metals. Yeah. Because it hasn't been diluted by water.
Makes sense.
The industry argues that if you remove the water from the fresh food, put them on a dry matter basis, the levels would look much closer.
That makes sense logically. But a dog doesn't eat dehydrated fresh food. They eat the wet version. So does the math actually matter to the dog's body in the end?
This is where it gets tricky. Dr. Wachschlag points out a math problem regarding calories. A dog has to eat a huge volume of fresh food, about 3 cups, to get the same calories as 1 cup of dense kibble.
Because the water has no calories.
Exactly. So to get their daily energy, the dog is eating more grams of the fresh food. Dr. Wachschlag argues that when you adjust for caloric intake, like how much lead is the dog consuming per calorie, the safety gap narrows significantly.
Oh, I see.
The fresh food isn't quite as pure as the raw numbers suggest because the dog consumes so much more physical volume of it.
But does it close the gap entirely? Like, is kibble actually safer per calorie?
No. Even the Clean Label Project admits the gap narrows, but they maintain that dry food is still higher in heavy metals, even per calorie, just not 21 times higher. It might be closer to 3 or 4 times higher, depending on the brand.
Got it. And there's also the regulatory angle here. The industry argues that detectable doesn't mean dangerous. They say these elements are natural, they are in the Earth's crust, and 0 is impossible.
And that is a fair scientific point. 0 is impossible. But here is the part that I think is the real scandal of this deep dive. You asked earlier, is this safe? The answer is Who knows? Because nobody's really checking.
Wait, hold on. What about the FDA? What about AFCO? I see those stamps on every bag. Complete and balanced. You're telling me they don't have a limit for arsenic?
This is the regulatory void. The FDA and AAFCO are very focused on acute illness. They test for salmonella, because that makes a dog, and its owner, by the way, sick immediately. They test for nutritional adequacy, like, does it have enough protein so the dog doesn't starve?
Okay.
But they do not have comprehensive federal limits for chronic industrial toxins like lead, arsenic, or mercury in pet food.
That seems like a massive loophole. We have a strict limits for human baby food.
We do now because parents demanded it. But in this study, the average bag of dog food had 18 times more lead than the FDA allows in baby food.
18 times. So the complete and balanced stamp just means it has enough vitamins, not that it won't give your dog cancer in 12 years.
Correct. And we know cancer rates in dogs are rising. Roughly 1 in 4 dogs will develop cancer. Now, correlation isn't causation. Maybe we are just diagnosing it better.
Yeah.
But Dr. Watchley makes the point that we simply lack the long-term studies. We are essentially running a massive experiment on our pets.
Wow. Let's pivot to the business side of this. Because whenever a report like this drops, especially one that attacks the entire format of the dominant product, you have to look at who benefits. This feels like a major shot fired in the format wars.
Oh, it's a direct hit. And this brings up the concept of the transparency tax. The whole industry is shifting. For decades, you bought a brand because the TV commercial with the golden retriever running through a field. Trust was based on marketing.
And now?
Now trust is based on data. The Clean Label Project released a list called the Clean 16. These were the 16 products out of the 79 tested that had the lowest contaminants. And if you're a kibble executive, that list is a nightmare.
Why? What was on it?
Well, because out of the 50 dry foods they tested, only 2 made the Clean 16 list.
2 out of 50. That is devastating.
Just 2. Hill Science Diet's Small and Mini and Solid Gold Nutrient Boost. That's it. Meanwhile, out of the 18 fresh and frozen foods tested, 14 made the list. This isn't just saying brand X is bad. It's saying kibble, as a technology, is dirty.
And there was one company that seemed, let's say, suspiciously prepared for this news. Let's talk about Freshpet.
Yeah, the timing here is fascinating. On the exact same day this scary report hits the news cycle, Freshpet puts out a press release announcing they are the first brand to get Clean Label Project certification for their entire portfolio.
That does not feel like a coincidence.
It's not. Freshpet started this testing process a year ago, back in early 2025. They knew this certification was coming. They likely knew the report was coming too. They positioned themselves to be the white knight the moment the consumer panic set in.
Is that good science or just brilliant PR?
It's really both. It's using science as a competitive weapon. It puts the kibble giants, Purina, Royal Canin, Blue Buffalo, in a defensive crouch. They were silent when this news broke. And silence looks like guilt to a consumer.
So now we have the farmer's dog, who didn't pay for the Clean Label certification, but they released their own long-term feeding study with Cornell.
Exactly. It's an arms race of validation. The transparency tax means companies now have to pay for third-party testing to prove they aren't poisoning pets. And that cost is eventually going to come out of our pockets.
Which brings us to the practical takeaways for the listener. Because I'm looking at these prices, and fresh food can cost $150, maybe $200 a month for a big dog. Kibble is pennies compared to that.
Yeah.
If I can't afford to switch, am I a bad owner? Do I need to panic?
No. And I want to be very clear on this because the experts were adamant. Panic leads to bad decisions. When people panic, they try to make their own dog food at home, usually just chicken and rice, and they end up causing severe malnutrition because they miss the calcium or the taurine.
Right. So stick with the commercial food, but change how we use it.
The best advice for the budget-conscious owner is rotation.
Explain that. Because
Right.
my vet always told me don't switch the food, you'll upset their stomach.
That advice is becoming a bit outdated, provided you switch gradually over a few days. Think about the risk profile. If you feed the exact same bag of Blue Buffalo chicken every day for 10 years, and that specific formula happens to be high in arsenic, your dog is getting a highly concentrated dose.
You're diversifying your portfolio.
Exactly. Switch proteins. Switch brands. Maybe do beef for 3 months, then lamb from a completely different company. By rotating, you prevent the accumulation of any single contaminant profile.
And what about the topper strategy?
Oh, this is great for the budget. You don't have to go 100% fresh. If you replace just 20% of the kibble with fresh food, or even safe human leftovers like lean meats, broccoli, carrots, you are diluting the pollution. You are lowering the overall load of acrylamide and heavy metals without breaking the bank.
That feels much more manageable. It's not an all-or-nothing situation.
It shouldn't be. The goal is reduction, not perfection.
And I guess the final takeaway is about being a skeptical shopper.
Read the lab, not the label. Words like natural, premium, or gourmet are legally meaningless. Look for brands that actually publish their heavy metal testing. If they don't show you the numbers, assume they don't want you to see them.
It's a brave new world for pet parents.
It really is. We are in a transition period. The poison headlines are sensationalized, yes. But the core finding is real. We have a regulatory void. We have an ultra-processed product that relies on ingredients that naturally bioaccumulate toxins.
And as we demand more testing, the price of dog food is inevitably going to go up.
Dr. Wachschlag estimated a price hike of $3 to $4 per bag as testing becomes the new standard. Safety isn't free.
It never is. You know, this whole deep dive leaves me with a pretty provocative thought. We live in a world where we have congressional hearings about the safety of baby food. We obsess over it.
Rightfully so.
Absolutely. But we have these fur babies that live in our houses, they sleep in our beds, and we feed them a diet that has no federal limit for lead. It really makes you wonder, is that complete and balanced stamp on the bag actually meaningless when it comes to long-term safety?
That is the big question every pet owner needs to ask right now. And until the regulations catch up, it's entirely on us to demand the data.
Well, that is certainly something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And give your pup an extra scratch behind the ears from us, maybe right after you toss a little broccoli in their bowl.
See you next time.